If kids don't learn to live with boredom, they're going to go from one kind of Coke to another. We have to help our young people handle boredom well because boredom is a fact of life. So how do you handle it well? We can teach those things, absolutely.
I think one of the hardest things for me as a dad is when my kids are bored. I don't like it. I don't like them sitting there doing nothing. I want them to be doing something all the time. But some recent research highlights that maybe teaching our kids to be bored is a good thing, and putting pressure on them to always be doing something can drive them to challenging things, especially when they are bored or they find themselves with nothing to do. Some kids have turned to substances to really be a salve for their inexperience with boredom. Man, that's a dark place. But today on the Celebrate Kids podcast, in this daily segment, Facing the Dark, Dr. Kathy has some great insights for us that can help shine some bright lights to help us lead our kids well and build muscles for boredom. So let's turn now to Dr. Kathy Cook.
Don't be afraid of the dark. Be careful with stars. Not every light is gonna guide you, baby. Not every light is gonna guide you.
So, Dr. Kathy, when e-cigarettes and vaping really first became popular, teens reported that the primary reason that they were using them was because of the taste and really to experiment. But following some efforts to address the vaping epidemic among teens in the US, there's really a new study now that suggests that teens who still vape indicate that they do it mainly to relax due to high levels of stress. According to findings from one recent report from the University of Michigan, among teens who reported vaping daily, 71% said that the most important reason was to relax or to relieve tension. Additionally, 49% of teens who didn't vape daily but reported vaping over the past year also said that relaxing and relieving stress were the main reasons that they vaped. The new study showed that among teens who vaped daily, 1/3 said the next most important reason they vaped was because they were bored. The third and fourth most important reasons were that they were hooked and because they also enjoyed the taste. So, Dr. Kathy, it seems that maybe we should have been working to make vaping, rather than less appealing, to actually work to make things like stress, anxiety, and maybe even boredom less prevalent for teens and those that might be naturally, I don't know, inclined or addicted to vaping. What do you make of these reasons that teens are still vaping and why this is still an epidemic kind of amongst teens? And how should we kind of look at those ideas of stress, anxiety, and even boredom, knowing that teens are working to escape that?
This is a really important study because now that we know that they're trying to escape stress, anxiety, and boredom, we can deal with those things. And we can make sure that these young people realize that those are reasons for vaping. And if they agree with us that vaping is unwise, it's unhealthy for your lungs, it can lead to other more dangerous addictions, then here are some things that you can do so that you will not need to vape. So what are some practical and beneficial ways to deal with stress and anxiety for you? And you're a male that's 14 years old. How could you deal with that well? And what could we show them? Are there not video games, but are there board games they could play? And that might sound like a really foolish idea, but board games can be really engaging, and you can learn to play a solitaire and different things by yourself that can actually bring life to you. Good heavens, you can read just for fun. Recreational reading is a dying art, and it can bring you places that you can never go on your own. And serving, I would say to all the parents of these kids, get them to serve. Teach them who they are and get them to volunteer. Force them if you have to at first, where the whole family on every Tuesday night is going to go to the nursing home to do these things, or the first Saturday of every month, and the whole family's going to go, or all the 10th graders go from the youth group. To serve gets our eyes off of ourselves, puts our eyes on others, and changes us and shows us that we're capable of leaving the world a better place. And those values will change us from depressed and anxious to believing that we are somebody who can become somebody to the glory of God, and it will change us. Boredom, we can learn to live with it. Somebody wrote an article a long, long time ago, and I'll never forget the line. If kids don't learn to live with boredom, they're going to go from one kind of Coke to another. And I think that's true. We have to help our young people handle boredom well because boredom is a fact of life. So how do you handle it well? We can teach those things, absolutely.
Dr. Kathy, I think that's helpful. And I think it reminds me of this idea that really sin or some of these maybe vices are a distortion of good and beautiful things that God's created. So I want to put that before you and kind of ask if that statement's really true, what are the good things that kids maybe pull from things like vaping that really are a distortion of maybe the great things that God has instituted or put into society?
Boy, it's fascinating. I do agree with you that sin is the distortion of good and beautiful things God created. I often have said to my audiences that anything well done, overdone is badly done. So oftentimes I think we have strengths and abilities and gifts and passions and joys, but too much of a good thing isn't a good thing. And so the best thing that God has created in us or for us, we can end up overdoing it, and then it becomes a problem for others, and it is definitely sin. So I agree with you there. What does vaping do? Vaping gives kids an identity in a community, and that's distorted, right? So we are created with an identity. We're created male and female. We're created with passion and compassion. We're created, some of us are single, some are married. Some are tall, some are short, some are gifted with words, some with numbers. There's so much, of course, that we could say there. So, we identity is part of God's design for us. It's how we get known. It's how we change the world. These kids who vape, that becomes their identity. I am a vapor, and they get their community. Their need for belonging is legit. We're all created for relationship. This is why we're drawn to Jesus Christ, because He once and for all solves that dilemma. He gives us the solution to the loneliness and the apathy, if you will. So I think kids who vape, just like kids who smoke, get community and get identity, and we need to give it to them in a better way.
And I think that some of us are inside of different communities where, our kids will be introduced to this, or some who really don't think our kids will ever be introduced to this, but we want to be attentive to really where our kids are at. And so I want to ask you, I think that there's a level of really resiliency. We want to build our kids a resiliency to overcome the temptations or even the, I don't know, inclination to participate in things like this. So how do we build resiliency inside of our kids that when stress or boredom happens, that they don't turn to substances to alleviate their tension, but they turn to something that actually, doesn't distract them from the stress or the tension that they might experience, but actually gives them, I would say, maybe muscles or something to engage that tension and maybe to leap from it, to catapult off of it, right? How do we build that resiliency inside of our kids, knowing that there's so much in the world that just wants to distract them from it?
Yeah, great question. Um, we need to start when they're young by teaching and training and being a model of handling stress well. If you come home from work and you carry your stress a long time and you're critical and you yell because of it, you're not teaching your children to handle stress in a wise way. So, are we modeling from the time that they're very little, that stress is a part of life? Anxiety may be real. You may be up for a promotion. There may be any number of things that are going on in your life. How do you demonstrate to your children how you handle that? Do you pray? And do they hear you pray for grace and mercy? Do they hear you pray that your boss will be, in a good mood and will be favorable toward your answers to questions or whatever? So, do we demonstrate our own wellness in this idea of stress and anxiety are real, but we don't have to bow down to them, if you will? So when they're little, be an example. When they're little, talk to them. When they're older, talk to them. You have a fifth grader, you have an eighth grader who's definitely stressed, but they're not talking to you. Get them to talk to you and just say, "Hey, I miss you. I'm your dad. This is my role in your life. I need you to, be honest, now, or I'll set a timer for 10 minutes and then let's go for a walk." But to stay present to your children and to engage with them and walk toward them and say, "Hey, I want to be there for you and to help you with this." So healthy responses that we demonstrate, getting them to talk, showing them smart ways that they can deal with stress, going for a run, going for a walk, shooting hoops, playing a game, tickling their sister, helping mom in the kitchen, getting distracted for a season, and then also coming back around and saying, why was that stressful for me? And was that an appropriate response? Do I have test anxiety? Could I talk to a guidance counselor? Have I not been listening in class, and that's why I'm so stressed that tomorrow's my turn to give a report because I don't really understand? That's on me. I caused that stress by not being attentive in class, and I don't like this feeling. So what am I going to do differently in the next couple of weeks in that history class? So I think helping kids analyze their responsibility would also be a huge help. That won't be easy, and they might not know it right away, but it would be very helpful.
I love what Dr. Kathy had to say today. It reminded me of a story that comes out of Exodus chapter 3. I'll read verses 1 and 2 and then jump to verses 10 to 12. Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. And he led the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. So now I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" And God said, "I will be with you." God called to Moses during this boring task of tending sheep in the wilderness. He commissioned Moses for a life-changing mission. The skills that Moses honed during those years were really crucial for leading a stubborn and fearful people through the wilderness later on in his life. Now, Moses was somebody who, when you follow his story, gets in trouble when he's bored, when he's just walking around, when he's wandering. It happened in Egypt when he saw one of Pharaoh's guards beating an Israelite, and it happens throughout the wandering that Israel does inside of the desert. But throughout Moses' life, there are little pockets where he does build muscles and God does speak to him in boredom. Really, before leading the Israelites out of Egypt, Moses spent 40 years as a shepherd in the wilderness of Midian. This time that Moses spent in the wilderness, though seemingly uneventful, was God's preparation for Moses to lead his people, really teaching him patience, endurance, and reliance on God. God transformed Moses' years of shepherding into really preparation for leading a nation, showing that no task is wasted when it's part of God's plan. I think when our kids are maybe in these places where they're bored, where they have space, helping them understand what God may be doing to form character or hone skills or teach them reliance on Him, these qualities will ultimately play pivotal roles in their life later on to help bring about God's redeeming plan in some way, shape, or form. I think that reminding our kids of these mundane moments, that they can have really an eternal significance, well, sometimes it could be exasperating. But maybe pulling them back and showing that there are other people who were bored too, Moses and David and even Ruth, guiding them to people who were bored and did certain things and heard God's voice and practiced waiting on the Lord. Those can be tiny muscles that will lead them to big things later in life. And that could be the bright light that shines and cuts through the darkness of their boredom today. Before you go today, I just want to remind you that we are running a special short course right now. It looks ahead at the challenges sometimes that many of us face with holidays. How do we parent or grandparent together? Especially when we're going to be in close proximity for a couple hours or maybe even a couple days here around the holidays with Thanksgiving and Christmas coming up. Because of the gracious work of a lot of donors, we've been able to create some special short courses that we've been offering for free. We offered one for free that helped parents talk through some of the dynamics of kids coming home from school. We called that Unpack the Backpack. And we also have this one on parenting and grandparenting together. We want to thank our donors who have made this possible and want to encourage you, if you'd like to support Celebrate Kids, especially at this year end, you can do that by going to our website, celebratekids.com. And if you want to join this short course, go to our website as well. You'll find it halfway down on the page when you scroll down, and it's titled Parenting and Grandparenting Together. Now I want to thank you for listening to the Celebrate Kids podcast, this daily segment Facing the Dark. On behalf of Dr. Kathy Cook, my name is Wayne Stender. Thanks for listening, and we're looking forward to seeing you here again tomorrow.